Hope you're having a great day. Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studios. We continue to celebrate so many wonderful people who are working in the trenches to make this such a great state. And we're going to be visiting with Bill Cork today, the Executive Director from Mississippi Development Authority. But I wanted to share with you a quote that I came across in my digital history book. And this is from John Wooden, John Wood, the famous coach. And I think it says a lot about how I view the world, but here's what he said. Be more concerned with your character than your reputation, because your character is who you really are, while your reputation is merely what others think of you. I think you be focused on what's right, and people will eventually, people may misrepresent who you are, who they think you are, but time will tell usually. I don't usually worry about what other people think. I think I'm going to do the best job I can do, particularly as it relates to this show and what I write. And over time, people will appreciate that. And if they don't, it doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't, because I'm going to be focused on what I think is right. So be concerned more about your character than your reputation. And I couldn't agree more. So with that said, let's move now over to my friend Bill Cork, the Executive Director for Mississippi Development Authority, one of the busiest guys in the state of Mississippi, working for a governor in Tate Reeves, who will always be known as an economic development governor. It's great to have you back, Bill.
I'm so glad to see you, my friend.
Well, look, for people who are not listening, who are not watching on YouTube or Facebook or whatever they're SuperTalk TV, they don't see the setup here, but you've got a fancy mic just like mine, and I appreciate you using that. It's great sound, but you have spared no expense in making sure the quality of your presentations are as good as they can be, have you?
Well, we talk to people all over the world, Ricky. This post-COVID environment, we do a lot of remote stuff in literally all over the world, and certainly throughout the United States. So, your first impressions are important. So we want to try to make sure people can see and hear us, and our message gets through.
I saw you nodding when I read that John Wooden, quote. Be concerned more about your character than your reputation. Listen, proof's in the pudding at the end of the day, isn't it?
Well, I sure think so. I think if we worry about our character, I think the reputation takes care of itself. You can only control what you can control. And that's a lot about, what we do in economic development. All we can do is control our actions and behaviors, and then we let the rest of the world judge us on that.
So listen, I read the update that you did recently, and I sent to you kind of a summary that I've been keeping up with. I think it's mostly complete, but man, if you're looking across the board on individual projects that are being announced, or whether it's looking at, Mississippi's ranking as it relates to GDP and so on just about every metric that matters, Mississippi is setting records. And that has got to have been an incredible ride for you and your team and the governor and his team.
Well, it is. It's a great ride. But it's not an accident. I think we've all worked very hard. It starts in the local communities, their level of organization and commitment, great political alignment with the legislature and the governor, competent technical execution, really smart people involved at all levels. And we set out to change the reputation of Mississippi and to be a dominant player in the Southeast Conference in economic development. And over the last 5 years, under the leadership of Governor Reeves, I think we can say we've achieved some level of success so far.
It's been so interesting watching, whether we're talking about some of the data centers or whatever. I think it brings focus to the power and utility side of things. That's always been important for sure, but it's never been more important than now. In fact, I saw where recently you guys did a summit around that particularly, but Mississippi's got a competitive advantage there right now, don't we?
We have some of the lower industrial rates in the Southeast Conference. Our power companies, up until recently, all were a little long on power, meaning they had some surplus power to sell. And, that was perfect timing with the data center rush. We had a really great confluence of events between the ability to deliver the power, this transcontinental dark fiber, which is needed to connect these data centers, plenty of water and land that was ready, shovel ready for development. And I just flew over Madison, coming back from a visit with some family over the weekend, and flew over the data center complex in Madison. It's just absolutely incredible in the last 14, 15 months, how much has come out of the ground. It's just unbelievable.
You think about NVIDIA and all the technology that's emerging now around AI. There doesn't seem to be a ceiling to this. I mean, you think about the investments that are being made really around the world, but particularly in the United States right now, this cutting edge innovation. You think about these data centers. I mean, like one building's about 10 acres. Am I remembering that right?
They're about 250,000 square feet a piece, and there'll be something like 16, 17 of these things in the first phase. So they're just massive, absolutely massive.
Unbelievable. I mean, the technology that's going into them, and it's going to literally revolutionize the world. I read recently, I forgot the guy's name. I'll pull it up here in just a second and remind me his name, but it was on one of the financial services and talked about the impact. I mean, we're not talking enough about the impact on potential workforce of AI over the next even 5 years. Do you think about that very much?
Well, we do more than think about it. It turns out that we got to jump on this through a variety of different vectors that have all kind of come together. The Mississippi Alliance for Artificial Intelligence's main program. We've got the governor's going to have back-to-back announcements over the next 2 weeks on major agreements and deployment of capital around AI and advanced training initiatives around AI. One of those, I think, will be, you'll find, and I don't want to preempt the governor's announcements, so stay tuned. I think he's already teased it on social media. But we're going to be working to train our existing industries, leaders, managers, workers throughout various sectors throughout the state on how to deploy and use AI, and with major commercial partners. So our real goal here is not only to transform higher ed, but to reach down deep into corporate culture and bring them along on this AI and cloud computing journey. Because if we don't do that, we're going to be left behind. And we want to be able to make sure that our folks are on the cutting edge. Dr. Courtney Taylor from Accelerate Mississippi was recently at a conference in Silicon Valley that NVIDIA hosted. And the panel moderator was an NVIDIA workforce leader, and she was on there with several other major state and workforce development folks. And an assemblyman from California kind of took a stab at Mississippi about being kind of behind the times on AI workforce, that California was the preeminent place. And the panel moderator, who knows our program, said, no, I think you've got this wrong. California is going to have to play catch up to Mississippi. So These are things that are not really making the headlines, but this is what's being talked about in the circles of power around AI. And we're really excited about the future.
And what's interesting about that is that you think about, I've said many times on this show that the community college system in Mississippi is among the best in the United States. I mean, if you start looking at individual programs, also their ability to listen to their stakeholders, in this case, industry, in this case, the state, when you're thinking about AI and how they might play a role in that. The universities are beginning to kind of take a page of their playbook and say, you know what, let's take Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, for example. Over 50% of their students now enrolled in non-traditional education. To me, is a great statement about how they have adapted to meet the needs of their industry and other corporate partners. And you're going to continue to see that. So what I'm saying is they're innovative, they're adaptive, they can move quick, they can turn on a dime, and there's no doubt that a coordinated effort around advanced artificial intelligence and where it's headed will literally integrate every business that we know about. And why not have education play a huge role in helping get companies to where they need to be? It's going to make companies in Mississippi more competitive. And if they don't do it, they're going to get left behind, as you pointed out.
You're exactly right. And I will not only suggest kudos for the community college system, but our higher ed in general in Mississippi, both public and private, is really remarkable what they're doing. In addition to the major flagship universities that we have here, I've spent a lot of time talking to some of the local private colleges and universities about what they're doing. And hey, don't be surprised if you start to see some of these colleges emerge as global leaders in advanced technology, in robotics, in medicine. There's going to be, I was down at William Carey, and I did not realize in Hattiesburg that William Carey University now produces more doctors than UMMC. Not a lot of people realize that. I mean, quietly just building a major program there. So we have some really, really hidden gems throughout the state, and excited to see what the future holds for Mississippi. I think being small is also to our advantage.
Yeah, I think so. William Carey is a great case study. I've had the president of William Carey on the show multiple times, and they are private institution. They are extremely nimble. What they're doing on the coast and what they're going to do to grow the coast is going to be phenomenal. Over the next 10 years, you won't even recognize William Carey on the coast. I think that competition among the university is very positive because we don't have a 4-year university on the coast, and we need one. Anyway, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Bill Cork from MDA. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. We're visiting with Bill Cork, who's the executive director for Mississippi Development Authority, probably one of the busiest guys in the state of Mississippi. But, when we went to break, we're talking about AI and how artificial intelligence is literally changing everything. I mean, it literally is changing everything. And if you don't know that, especially if you're in business and you don't understand what the applications are for your business, you're already behind. And so that Mississippi is leading on that front. To hear that Mississippi is leading on that front is really important. I mean, the whole notion of workforce development, I mean, aside from AI, of course, AI's got a role now, obviously, but workforce development, that is a huge competitive advantage if we continue to go down this road. Workforce development is the thing that when companies are coming here, they want to understand, is there a workforce that can go to work at my place? Mississippi has made tremendous investments in workforce development, but I bet you talk about that a lot, don't you?
We do, and we've got such great partners in not only all the educational institutions, but with what Accelerate Mississippi's been doing to kind of prioritize. I mean, just think of the massive ramp up we've got going on now in Marshall County, where they're going to have to put 2,000 of these battery technology workers to work. And how do you get them ready to commission that plant on day one? We've got the lowest unemployment rate in the state's history. We're lower than the national average. Our labor force participation rate is climbing. Those people that want to work can work. And because these jobs are just so different than the jobs of the past, if people have been sitting on the sidelines for a while, they're going to have to reskill to take advantage of these great family sustaining careers that we're bringing into the state. I also tell you, Ricky, a lot of people coming in here from out of state. I'm really eager to see when we get some really hard census numbers. I mean, just all the construction workers that have come in here that will be here for multiple years. We're hearing anecdotally now that they're buying houses, moving their families here because some of these construction projects are 2, 3, 4, 5 years in duration. So why not bring your family here, settle down, be able to have an easy commute to work while you're building the project. So I think we're going to capture a bunch of those people. They're going to fall in love with Mississippi, and they're going to stick around and add to our vibrant culture and community and bring great skills to the party.
Yeah, my son is a real estate lawyer. He does other types of law as well, but they do have a huge real estate business. And even today, they still do a large number of closings that are cash deals. So they're selling houses in California and places like that. And they're coming here and, they're shocked by the affordability, and they're paying cash for their homes and not even getting a mortgage. But, this notion about building, you think, okay, so there's an interesting correlation here between or a contrast here between, say, the battery factor where you talked about 2,000 employees in a data center, which is a massive initial investment and, of course, adds to the tax base in a tremendous way, but doesn't necessarily have a ton of employees. We need it all, though, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And look, I mean, I know we've talked about the central part of the state and the northern part of the state, but let's talk about the coast. I mean, companies like Relativity Space just got bought by Google co-founder Eric Schmidt, going to be putting a huge infusion of resources into that company. They've been on a massive hiring spree, hiring hundreds of aero-astro type of engineers, rocket propulsion engineers. We don't produce a lot of those in the state, so where are they coming from? There's I think over 300 of them that we've attracted just in the last few years down in the Hancock County area of the state. So, we've got this big new chemical plant that's coming, $540 million project. Not a lot of jobs, but what I'm hearing is a lot of suppliers and off-takers now are in the market looking to take advantage when that plant becomes complete. How can they then squeeze additional value and have the ancillary capability built around that? So it's not just the anchor announcements that we've got. Almost every one of these big projects surrounds itself with suppliers and vendors, as well as off-takers that can add economic value to the community. And most of that stuff is just lagniappe. It just comes with it, and we don't have to buy those projects.
Hey, listen, on relativity, specifically at Stennis, I actually ran across that this morning as I was thinking more about the silos of coastal Mississippi. And people tend to think of the, Biloxi, our Gulfport Biloxi International Airport, and they forget that we've got Trent Lott that's doing, innovative stuff with Northrop Grumman. And then you've got, the innovation that's happening at Stennis. We've got some assets in coastal Mississippi, don't we?
Well, it's incredibly asset-rich environment. I mean, multiple airports, multiple ports. We often talk about the shipbuilding cluster. That's growing. I mean, it's growing at astronomical rates. With Bollinger coming in and the polar icebreakers and the security cutter business and a whole range of things. And of course, the spillover effects from the ports in Mobile. We've got employees living in Mississippi that go over there, so we're getting some of the benefit of that. Clearly, the aerospace related assets in Hancock, the logistics and major commodities businesses out of the Port of Gulfport, the airport's all thriving. Look, Ricky, I mean, in the last year or so, we've started to see more multi-billion-dollar projects looking at coastal Mississippi than ever before. It's going to be a matter of not if, but when some of these major anchors come. But one of the things they all have in common is that they need to be at that nexus between the ocean and logistics. And so that's the sweet spot for coastal Mississippi. And, you're not going to necessarily get maybe big data centers close to the water because of weather risk and other things. But if you've got to be near the water and access to great rail and highway infrastructure, coastal Mississippi's, got very few competitors in that regard.
Yeah. Like as you and I have discussed before, but I get this so significantly. If you think about great planners, if they were to come to coastal Mississippi and look at coastal Mississippi on a map, they would immediately say, okay, you've got a port. You've got more than one port. You got diverse. Listen, I had the port director on from Pascagoula recently. I should just point this out. The opportunities for growth for Pascagoula is tremendous. You think about the island and what the future possibilities might be there, what's coming in the energy sector. I mean, it ranks Pascagoula as one of the top ports in America. People don't think about it that way. But if you think it like Savannah, what Savannah's done with logistics, for example, and the opportunities that Gulfport could have around that, I mean, the sky's really the limit. But what a planner would do is say, you got a port, you got rail, you got interstate highway, you got a central location. Look where coastal Mississippi is relative to the rest of the United States. The right opportunity is going to lick their chops at this place. And you're right. I think it's just a matter of time. But there's tremendous upside, isn't there?
There certainly is. And, a lot of people may not realize that, for example, the Port of Gulfport on its western pier has already been permitted by the Corps of Engineers and gone through all the environmental wickets to expand the length of that pier by another almost 200 acres. And recently getting permission to start, increasing the depth of the channel so that we can get bigger vessels in here. So room to grow, speed to market, all of that is really, really, really interesting. And I can tell you that, Bo Etheridge over at the Port of Pascagoula used to work for me as my port director in Hancock County. Know him very well. John Nass we're linked at the hip. As you know, the state Port of Gulfport has a formal approval process through MDA. So we're aware of all the things that they're doing and they're planning, and I have to approve all their documents and things for real estate deals and such. So we have a very close connectedness there. And I can tell you that the kind of discussions we're having are not small potatoes discussions. I mean, shipbuilding and major logistics, et cetera.
I think both of those guys are made for the moment. I didn't know Bo, heard about him. We had a mutual friend who gave me a heads up to know a little bit more about him, not just as a port director, but as a person. Bo was actually in New Orleans while I was publisher of the Times-Picayune and president of NOLA Media Group. And I know a lot of the people he worked with over there. And so what a great place to cut your teeth. I mean, working with the Port of New Orleans. But I was super impressed with him, Bill. Not only is he capable, but he's enthusiastic. He sees the upside. He's able to talk about it in very specific ways. Really, really impressive. I was pleased to meet him and spend some time with him. And I think he's going to be a terrific port director over there over many years to come if we can keep him here.
I think you've got 3 great port directors. You got 3 great airport directors. I think you have good political alignment on their boards and commissions that get it, that understand we're playing a long game here, and to be patient and stay after it. It will, and those changes will come. But I'm very confident that the coast is in good hands, and that we've got a great relationship up here with Governor Reeves and the legislature. We have our eye on that prize, and we continue to focus on it. In fact, on Monday, I just hired a new project officer here at MDA, who spent about 8 years working at Harrison County Development Commission, and then almost 5 years working for me at Hancock County, who's now going to be my eyes and ears on the ground and going to take an office up in the State Port of Gulfport's offices, but will be a liaison for the coast for MDA. And we haven't had regional offices at MDA for a long time. I wouldn't call this a regional office. She'll be an asset for the whole state, but forward deployed, if you will, to make sure that we are on top of everything that's happening down there, and that we have an MDA presence on the ground, making sure things can happen.
That is really good to hear for sure. Sky's the limit. I believe it to the depths of my bone. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Bill Cork from the Mississippi Development Authority. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We're visiting with Bill Cork, who's the executive director for the Mississippi Development Authority. This is the state's economic development entity, working, hand in glove with the governor, and Tate Reeves, who will always be known as an economic development governor. And this is more than just going out there and attracting a business to come to Mississippi. There's so many pieces to this puzzle, as you're hearing, from how you engage higher education in the conversation, the role that education plays in general, the work of workforce development and how you pull that off, and own the role that utilities plays. Then there's a lot of angles to this dangle, isn't there, Bill?
Yes, there sure is. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Okay. It's further complicated by all the national transition that we're dealing with on the global stage too, with trade and tariffs and all that. It's just another constraining factor.
Hey, I still believe that what is happening relative to these trade conversations, sometimes you have to not get hung up. And this is not something, I'm not saying this to you. I'm just saying this as a general statement. People get hung up on ways, and they have an inability to step back away from it to see sort of what's happening. And you think about, Canada and the European Union and really around the world, what Trump has done, and there's no moving back now. What Trump has done is really force a discussion about global economics in ways that will change the economy of just about every nation. They're having conversations now about how can we be more self-sufficient? Why are we so reliant? And what are all these different relationships? I believe that once we get on the other side of that we will continue to see jobs, certain kinds of jobs, move back into America. I believe that. And I think there's going to be opportunities for Mississippi in those conversations. That's why we've got to stay hitting on all these cylinders so that when those opportunities arise, we're ready. And you said it. You're having global conversations. I bet you're seeing all kinds of conversations around what I'm talking about.
Well, when Trump first announced the tariffs on Independence Day, I was in Europe, and I had previously weeks scheduled with CEOs all across Europe trying to attract those businesses to Mississippi. And all they wanted to talk about was the president and the tariff policy and uncertainty that this could create for them. Well, what I know is this, and I was in Korea just a week before that, and there was the tariff rumblings were already happening. What I can tell you, Ricky, is this. business people are very calm and very thoughtful and very analytical folks, especially at these global CEO levels. They're in multiple countries and multiple markets, and they want to make sober, rational decisions. And really, what they want is certainty. There's one other thing I think that's true as well. These companies are in multiple countries, and they know the disparities in the trade relationships between these countries. There's nobody that knows this better than Apple or some of the big foreign companies that are doing business here in the United States. And they know that we need to have a rebalancing discussion. And I think when you take this, there's a collision happening between an urgent need to get our net exports under control and a Trump administration that only has 4 years to achieve anything. And so there's a sense of urgency, a bias for action. We knew going in this was going to be highly disruptive, but I think the cooler heads are prevailing. The market's not really having a huge adverse reaction. The bond markets are a little bit in turmoil. But I think everybody who really understands international trade and investment understands this rebalancing is necessary. You want a strong and vibrant America that has the capability to defend itself, to help defend others, to have its critical industries protected, and to have a strong and vibrant middle class. Hollowing out our middle class and creating these kind of major debtor kind of nation status, this is not good for the world. And I think ultimately cooler heads will prevail. Deals will get done that will balance trade. We'll bend the curve of trade deficits and debt, which are highly linked. A lot of people don't understand that. And once we get that sorted here by 2028, 2029, we'll see a future that's much more stable and prosperous for everybody, including America.
What's interesting, there's a lot to unravel there, but what's interesting is that, first of all, I think Scott Bessent has done a terrific job, and he's brought focus to things like the debt to GDP ratio and why that's important for us to talk about. But think about what I just said, debt to GDP ratio. What's interesting is when I'm having conversations with everyday people who are not as engaged in these conversations like you and I are, and they know what that means. People, when you get into a discussion of the average person who's not following this the way you and I are, who can say, but remember, this is them saying back to me. Of course, we know this already, but it's cool that they know it too. And they say, it's not just the trade, it's all these non-trade barriers. We are, the level of literacy that's being developed in the average American today about how out of whack it was. This point about rebalancing is way beyond just tariffs. I mean, it has to do, in some cases, has to do with, as you said it, military support that we're providing and all. It's a very cumbersome, detailed scenario that we're working our way through. And I think that when we get on the other side of it, we're going to be better off. The cat is out of the bag. I don't care what any court does. Every country is going to go forward, and we're going to land at a new place. We're going to like some of where we land. We're not going to like some of where we land, but the net of it all is going to be, we're going to be in a better place as a nation. And within that, whatever that is, there's opportunities for Mississippi in that. I believe that as sure as I'm sitting here.
Well, as soon as that, as I got back from Europe and Asia and the full effect of the Trump tariff strategy started to play out, our phone rang off the hook from international companies looking at Mississippi to try to find alternative ways to bring inbound foreign direct investment into the United States to get credit with the administration for some of these trade imbalances. These companies know they're taking advantage of American markets. They know that this is a good deal has been a good deal for them, and they're already positioning themselves. You see the smart, big international conglomerates like Hyundai, who announced billions of dollars, like Apple, who's repositioning and onshoring. It's going to take some time, but they realize the party's over. And I just hope we have a legislature that has the political will to help us in this process, because at the end of the day, we're not all going to be able to take a federal benefits check to keep up our consumer habits because we don't have any good jobs. That's the reality. So Mississippi is very smart. Tate Reeves started off very early on, Ricky, focusing on manufacturing and making things. So we've had a 5-year head start to capturing this business with our product development, our workforce development, and I suspect we will clean up when it comes time.
What was impressive to me though about where Tate is that he kept his nose to the grindstone even through all the COVID stuff, which was, I mean, the redirecting power of that away from being able to focus on the future and just focus on the now was very significant. And you had to continue to build a head of steam during those COVID years to be able to start to appreciate where we are today. But it's really amazing. And one other quick point, I spend a lot of time in the Mississippi Delta because I have a place up there and I have farmer friends, and watching what Delta farmers have had to go through with the cost of seeds and fertilizer and all these different products, the cost of doing business is so high, and the price of their products being driven down to some of the lowest they've had to deal with. They're upside down in most cases before they even get started. And a lot of that's non-trade barrier related. And I hope to God that wherever we land puts us in a better position for farmers, especially farmers in the Mississippi Delta, because their options to sell their land are higher today than they've ever been. And we need them to stay in the farming business, Bill.
Well, we've got it's a rare jewel. We've got some of the most fertile and productive land in the United States. And I really have confidence that Brooke Rollins, who's the new ag secretary, has a seat with the adults in the room in the Trump administration, influencing what's going on with trade and tariffs. And I believe that's the case. I think we've got great legislative leadership. I know Cindy Hyde-Smith in particular has taken this on as her calling. I think she's doing yeoman's work there. And, we will see how it turns out. But I feel optimistic, Ricky, just because I'm in the international trade business every day. I think you can argue maybe with some of the specific tactics, but the general sense of where we need to go, which is to cut our budget deficit, to reduce federal spending, to create additional revenue from non-tax sources through tariffs is a strategy. It can be critiqued, but it is a legitimate, thoughtful approach that they're using, and I hope people will give it some time to work out.
Cindy Hyde-Smith has a special relationship with President Trump. She actually shared with me on the show that one of their drives down Highway 90 on one of his visits here, she was pointing out the value of real estate along Highway 90, and he was captivated by that conversation. And her relationship with Rawlings is really important. And I think we've got a great ag commissioner in this nation right now. I think I'm super impressed with her every time I hear her talk. She's a very, very good communicator, which tends to be a trait of most of the people that are around Trump these days. Their ability to communicate is really, really good. Hey, when we come back on the other side, I'm going to mention one little thing about the Mississippi alluvial soil of the Mississippi Delta that you'll find interesting, and then we'll shift gears and see what else might be on Bill's mind. This is Bill Cork from the Mississippi Development Authority, and we'll be back after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We have Bill Cork, the Executive Director for the Mississippi Development Authority. This is the Chief Economic Development Organization for the state of Mississippi, working hand in glove with Governor Tate Reeves to have tremendous success across the state in the last few years. It's been something to behold. I mentioned I was going to say one thing about this wonderful alluvial soil of the Mississippi Delta. We plant summer plots for wildlife, and we did a test plot last year, and it went so well, we decided to do some additional areas. And so my son Jordan and I were there, and we had to work through some of the most horrendous mud you've ever seen. One thing about the Mississippi Delta mud is if you get it on your tires and you don't spin your tires, it will just continue to build up on your tire until your dang axle breaks. I mean, this stuff is serious. We worked our way through all that because we only had one day to get it done. And when I got home, I cleaned the four-wheelers, but when you're putting seeds out, we had various forms of beans and sunflowers and different stuff that's part of this summer food plot. When I got back, we cleaned for 2 hours before we got back. So when I got back, I cleaned some more. But then I noticed a couple of days later, if there was a grain of mud left anywhere and a seed came in contact with it, I had beans growing all over my four-wheeler. I mean, that soil, we're not joking. That soil is rich, man. And let me tell you what I did. I pulled all those seeds out as they were, little plants growing on my four-wheeler. And I put them in a bucket over to the side, put a little bit of dirt on it. And now those things are about 2 feet high. And it all started on my four-wheeler. Anyway, yeah, that soil is something to behold. And we're lucky to have those Delta farmers, that's for sure. Listen, the last time you and I talked, we talked about the new marketing campaign that's part of what you're doing, which is let's break new ground. I think that's such a perfect thing. I mean, you couldn't be any simpler than that. Let's break new ground. We want more manufacturing. We want more aerospace. We want to tap into the blue economy. We want all that stuff. It's worked well for you, that slogan, hasn't it?
Well, it is. We like it because it's aspirational. You know, we had Mighty Mississippi was kind of our tagline. Sounds a little like Mighty Mouse. You know, we had to tell everybody how mighty we were. I know it was a play off the river and all that, but it kind of became a running joke at some of the conferences I would attend, for example. It's like, here's Bill Cork from Mighty Mississippi. You know, I don't want to be the walking joke. I just want to win projects and beat other states in projects. And I want to be the most creative we can be. And the governor wants to be as really forward thinking and transformational and progressive, and the way we think about how our economy works and how we interact with business. And we don't have all the answers. I think that's the other thing it admits. That brand says, look, we want to break new ground with you. We don't necessarily know all the answers, but if you work with us, we're going to be a great partner. Let's break new ground together. Let's do something transformational for your business and for our state. And let's create win-win opportunities. People really responded well. We kind of rolled it out for the first time at a big foreign direct investment conference called Select USA in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago, over 5,000 attendees. And we got so many, a lot of our competitors, by the way, walked by and said, oh man, that's a really good idea. You know, they get it, right? They understand that it's inviting and it's not, it's not hyperbole. You walk through these conferences and you see the trademarks, logos of all the other states, and they all say the same thing. You know, we're the best this, we're the best that, we're the top 5. You know, okay, who says, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We just wanted to we want to flip the script and say, look, you're part of the story. Let's do this together. And I think it's been a great campaign.
Yeah, we've had Joe Max Higgins, as you know, has been on the show many times, and we've talked about the work that they're doing with mega sites. Their Cinco site was recently certified. I had Ryan Miller on recently from Oxford talking about their regional effort that was passed by the legislature. But man, we've got economic development organizations across this state getting smarter, don't we?
Yeah, it's really, I've always said economic development is a ground game, and Mississippi's success really is a function of how smart our local communities are. And that's the lesson for all the other communities, is that's where it happens. And getting yourself a plan, understanding your assets and your strengths and your competitive advantages, and then building a brand for yourself, and then tackling the day-to-day stuff. I mean, we've talked about this on this show before, Ricky. I mean, it was 10 years or 11 years from the time Joe Max ran his first water line to a 2,000-acre site before he landed the aluminum dynamics project. So it takes vision, takes patience, takes some skin in the game. But every community that has demonstrated that clearly to the state, we've been there as a partner to help them along the way. And that's the message I'd like to leave to every community that's listening today.
Well, when you see what Ryan and his compadres are doing up in that part of the town, you see what Golden Triangle is doing, you see what DeSoto County is doing. My goodness. I mean, stuff just continues to happen there. And then Joey and Madison and what's happening, there. I mean, literally, you could point out, great economic development leadership literally just about across the state of Mississippi in one form or another. And that's awesome.
Don't forget the coast. You got some good
I was
folks
going to say, I mean, I think the Jackson County Economic Development Foundation, the formation of it, the way it's formulated with this public-private partnership is a best practice. I like the way that has been formed. And, you're talking about skin in the game. You got public and private sector folks sitting at the table together, and they really believe they have skin in the game. There are strengths and weaknesses to all forms, but I particularly like that form. And I especially like what Golden Triangle has done. I like what they've done up in the Oxford, Lafayette County, and there's 4 counties. Is it 4 counties that are in part of that, or 3?
It's 4. Yeah, Yellow Bush,
yes, 4.
Tate, Panola, and Lafayette, I think.
Yeah, we're out of time today, but this has been Bill Cork from the Mississippi Development Authority. Thank you, Bill, for joining me, my friend.
Thank you, Bricky. Have a good one.
You bet.